living your life out of total curiosity can lead to amazing discoveries. And there's forever something to discover about yourself, about the people around you, the people you love, the places you go. It's important to just have the courage to take the leap, whatever that leap is for you, because if that's what you're thinking, then it's niggling in there and you need to do it. And you never know what's going to come out of it. So take the leap, be curious, go discover, and notice all the things that are happening to you and around you and the places you're at any given moment. Be present. And it's amazing what comes to you.
Have you ever wanted to travel around and work from anywhere and see the country in unusual ways, but maybe there was something holding you back? Well, today's guest is going to share all the things that she did to do just that. Welcome to Women Leaders on the Move, a Her C-Suite Radio podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Benamou, and every week I bring you inspirational stories and ideas to help you navigate what's next and design your career and life by your choice, and also define what lights you up and where you want to go. Today's guest is Laurie Wessels. She is president of the Wessels Group, and she's an executive coach and speaker. And today we're going to be talking about her big life decision and what it meant for her in the last 2 years of her career and her life. And she is one of the biggest inspirations behind our new book, Power of What's Next, Bold Moves by Design. She is leading her life boldly by design. Let's get started with this conversation now. Laurie, I'm so excited to welcome you to Women Leaders on the Move today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me back, Natalie. I always enjoy it.
You're like the all-star of guests because you've been on multiple shows for me and you've been on this podcast from the very beginning, from like probably the first 10 episodes at least to now today, and the evolution in 4 years. So I'm just so honored to have this conversation and continue discussing things with you because I know our listeners are going to love hearing what we're talking about.
Thank you.
And today we are going to be talking about the path that you have created since leaving Chicago, and all the things that you're doing is so different. And I want to start with what inspired you to take that first bold move and go on this journey that you're on today.
Gosh, I think I actually have to credit some of it to COVID. We were all so isolated, and I decided that I really need to shake things up a little bit. And, we all went through that phase that we had never experienced before. And I think it got me thinking about, well, what am I missing? Because it was such a lonely time. And thinking about that, I was thinking about, well, I really want to do more traveling, and I really want to get out and see the country, the world. And I thought, well, how can I do that? So I was going to live on my cousin's sailboat, which unfortunately went down in I think it was Hurricane Ian. And so then I thought, okay, well, I can still get that experience with a camper. And I love to camp. So I thought, why don't I just buy a camper and travel around like a lot of people did during COVID? And this is past COVID, and I'm always behind the curve. But I decided to get this camper, and then all of a sudden I decided, why do I have a home? And so everything just kept spiraling in a good way, that it got me to the place where I decided I'll sell my home, I'll live in a camper, and I'll just travel around and do my work and see what happens. And that's where I'm at.
I just want to take a pause because I don't think anyone listening to the show has ever thought, I'm going to sell my home and I'm going to travel. And you don't just travel in the United States, because you've also gone to your timeshares and different places. So you've really traveled throughout the United States, but you've also gone to Mexico a few times and other places, right?
Oh yeah, I've been to several countries. Yeah, absolutely. I love to experience different places and things. But having the camper, obviously I'm kind of bound to North America, if you will. It's amazing what's out there in this country, where that people from all over the world come and visit, and we don't even don't know they exist. I've found so many amazing areas in the US and Canada that I had no idea. It's like, how did I not know this? It's amazing what this country has to offer.
It really is. When I graduated college, I made this idea that I'm going to travel and camp across the United States. So I left Michigan and went all the way out to Seattle and back. So that was my journey for a month. And I had no idea what was out there, the Badlands in Minnesota and just, the national parks. My favorite was Glacier by far, although Mount Rainier was really great. And going and seeing Mount St. Helens back in the day. So when I went, it hadn't been, this is how long ago I graduated. And it only been, I don't know, 8 years or something since it had gone off. So it was still like all covered in ash and it was quiet. There was no sound on this entire mountain. You're like, there's no sound. There's no nothing. It was eerie. It was so eerie. But to experience all those things and the small towns, which I love and I know you love, we live in a country that is so vast and diverse in even 100-mile radius. You don't realize. So what are some of the things that you've seen? And I know we could talk for hours on this, but what are some of the things that you weren't expecting when you were traveling?
I didn't expect Georgia mountains to be so amazing. Various states say they have the biggest canyon next to Grand Canyon, the mini Grand Canyons. I've now seen about 6 mini Grand Canyons. They're all just gorgeous. So Georgia mountains surprised me a bit. I always love the national parks too. I like all the Yellowstone and Glacier but one national park that doesn't get enough credit or visibility, if you will, Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota. It is amazing. It's kind of Grand Canyon, Badlands, all put together and buffalo everywhere. And that one shocked me. I just was not expecting that in North Dakota. So those are, some of the surprising things. I mean, Florida's always nice because that's kind of my summer or winter thing. And it's beachy and it's pretty, metro sort of in laid back areas. Canada, Nova Scotia, which I just returned from, how has that not been on my bucket list? I have no idea. It is absolutely stunning. And there's so many different geographies, so many different things to see and do because it's all coastal and you've got all your little fishing towns. I mean, lobster every other day. I'm like, okay, enough of the lobster already. And watching the tides go in and being able to walk the ocean floor when the tide is out and find awesome rocks, which sadly I collect a lot of rocks when I'm out hiking and walking. And I have a little kayak. I tootle around and it's great. In fact, I'm going to go out kayaking soon.
I was just going to ask you, can you describe what a day looks like for you today? Because you have your business that you're also doing, but then you are really living just such a full experience of where you are. What does a typical day look like for you?
Typical, if you could say, would be I work a couple hours in the morning. I'm teaching a class right now for Northwestern's project management. So I'm working with my students online and keeping up to breast on that. And then if I have other work that needs to be done and periodically have coaching clients that I'm chatting with. And then I usually try to do all that in the morning. Then in the afternoon, if it's depending on weather, hike, bike, kayak, sit on the beach and read. Museums, it really just depends what's in the area, the sites and attractions. The world's largest frying pan, the world's largest ball of twine. I just recently took a picture of the world's largest telephone and world's largest pizza cutter. So
And how big are these items? This is what I want to know. Are they really big?
yes, these things are huge. The world's largest file cabinet was in Burlington, Vermont. And it literally is a stack of file cabinets. It's skinny but super tall. And, you can't even take a picture to give the dimensions to show how unbelievably crazy it is. So I get a kick out of those weird things. And, there's so many historic towns that have, war stories or famous people stories. Seneca Falls completely threw me away near Lake Ontario. It was the first women's conference 77 years before women got the right to vote. Talk about women stepping out, and men too. There were some men. I mean, I had no idea that was 77 years before women got the right to vote
So was that 1850s?
in the 1800s. Yes.
So what's amazing to me, because I love reading historical fiction, and my favorite period is 1850s. Women were doing unbelievable things. And it's like, well, then what happened? Because there's like the first doctors in the 1850s. There's the first spy that helped Lincoln, that saved his life, female spy. There's all these like firsts of women. And then there's this gap until we can vote. Like, what is that even about?
Well, you have a lot of interesting stories in between, but they don't always recognize all that work in between. But it blew me away that here in this little tiny town in Seneca Falls was the very first inkling of women trying to get the vote. And this is a time when women owned nothing, they had no property, they had no say. I mean, it was literally law that they followed their husband's word, everything. First, I think how far we've come. And then second, I'm like, have people attitudes really changed? I even wrote that in the book because it sparked something new in me that, wow, we still have a long way to go before there's true equality in terms of people's minds. DI, was an attempt to do that, and it did it in essence, but did it actually change attitudes? Yes, some. And I look at where we are today in the world, and it seems like I thought the attitudes had changed more than I think they have.
Yes. And from the time that the 19th Amendment happened to the time that all women could vote was another 70 or so years. I don't think it was until the mid 70s where every woman in this country could vote. So now we're talking like 140 years. Crazy. That is a crazy amount of time.
I don't think I would have done well in that period. I would have probably been hung
Oh my gosh. Well,
for being, I mean, any woman that spoke out
yes.
was in jeopardy of stoning and hanging. I mean, for very little reason.
Right. And so now, I mean, flash forward to this moment, you are traveling by yourself to all these places, which is the second piece of not only is it courageous to sell what you know, and you left Chicago to go alone and to go out into the wilderness. What is that like for you?
It's not a big deal in my world. The only time I'm extra cautious is if I'm in a area that I'm just not sure of. I make sure my doors and windows are locked and I have my mace and whatever. And when I'm hiking, sometimes I make noise, and because that's more of a wilderness danger, not a people danger in my world. Just gotta take precautions. I'm not stupid. I know I'm by myself, and I don't, I always wear my life jacket, if you will, because whereas with people I may not. I don't know. I don't find it strange at all. I get to do what I want to do. I don't have to go where other people want to go. And it's kind of one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, Johnny Cash's hometown. You see a sign and you just go. Whereas, I don't really have an agenda most days other than get my work done in the morning and play in the afternoon. Sometimes I've got to do other things in the afternoon. It just depends how busy I am at the time, right? I try to kind of stack my days so I don't have piecemeal everywhere so I can have good chunks of time to go hike and bike and kayak and stuff. I mean, sometimes at night at dinner time, it gets a little lonely, but I watch my Caitlin Clark Fever games and I don't always have internet. So I read a lot, which has really been nice. I've been reading things that I would normally not read. That's thanks to book clubs. Other than that, I just hang out. And, I mean, there's always people at the campgrounds if you want to talk to other people and meet other people. And sometimes I do.
And you joined a club. There's a club that you get to go, or not a club, but
Oh, the membership.
yes, talk about that. What is that like?
If you have a camper or a vehicle where you're contained, in other words, where you have your own toilet, you can join this membership of Harvest Host. And it's, I don't know how many thousands, 6, 7,000 farms, wineries, breweries, distilleries. Sometimes it's just somebody's backyard and you can stay there overnight. So I, of course, lean toward the wineries and the breweries, and I always meet people then. I get to be good friends with the bartenders, and I do my tastings. Of course, I always have to do the flights, so I get a variety of tastes. I love doing those. Yeah, it's a great program. It's a great system.
And it's nice because you can meet other people.
You do. A lot of the Harvest hosts have, maybe 2 or 3 sites for a camper, and we all kind of, hi, how are you? And, oh, you're going to go in for, okay. And so we go in and then we chat. So yeah, you do meet people that way.
As you start thinking about where you're going next, you're living your next now, but what is there a next to this, or are you living this next and you're going to keep going in this next phase? What does it look like for you?
One of these days I will settle down and buy a home somewhere, so I have a place to put my rocks, obviously. That moving day will not be pretty. I have to do Alaska yet, and I'm going to need a few months to do Alaska. So until I do Alaska, I am not buying a home. Next summer will probably be Alaska, and then Alaska is the only state I haven't been to.
Wow, you've been to all the states but Alaska.
Yes,
That's amazing. Wow, and that is it's far and also big, right? There's a lot of wilderness there.
a lot. That's why it's going to take me a few months to really do it right. And hopefully I'll have people pop up and visit with me when they're.
Yeah, the summer I think is the time, right? Because otherwise the winter is just too it gets pretty cold.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust to drive in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I'm curious because you had this vision of doing 3rd grade art. Is that still something is that still on your horizon? And for our listeners, they don't know what that is. So talk about that.
Third grade art is an idea I had. So when I was in third grade, that was when they started saying you can't have 2 heads on a dad, and the baby has to be smaller than the parents, or the dog can't have wings. That's when they started telling you the right and wrongs of things. In fact, my third grade music teacher said I was a joy to have in class. I participated well. However, I failed to sing in tune. Who says that to a third grader? I had this.
How many 3rd graders sing in tune? That's what I want to know.
I dreamt of being the next Patsy Cline, and well, that just went out the window. I still will never forget that, because to this day I believe I cannot sing. Sadly, I think it's true, but maybe with lessons. So third grade art is for all of us artists who need to step out of doing things right. Art can be created anywhere and with any format. And so I want to have this art school where we have classes, but Joe Schmo off the street can teach a class and do fun things like retro things we did, the macrame or the, burning wood things, do retro night, and it'll be a BYO so people can enjoy themselves. So it's really just to allow people to express themselves in a way that is absolutely stupid and silly and has no rules. Actually, I'm thinking about from the business side of it, to allow teams to come in and do teamwork in terms of, for example, you've got a team issue. Okay, let's draw it out. Everybody adds to the picture. What's it look like? It could be totally abstract, it could be words, it could be anything. And then we turn to a different paper and say, okay, if it wasn't that way, what would it look like? And then they all throw things up there, whatever colors, it doesn't matter. The point is that then they have a conversation as to how do we get from here to there? And, why was this color black? Why did you move it to pink over here? And so on. So it's a way for people in conflict to have a conversation, but have it in a silly way that takes away the barriers and the defensiveness and the need to be right. So it's kind of an experiment if I ever get there.
I hope you do, because I've been waiting for that. I can't wait. I love art, and I like doing things outside the lines. I'm not good within the lines, so I'm just waiting for an outside the lines course so that I can just pop in and do silly art.
Yeah, and I think people learn more when they're having fun
Yes.
and when there's humor involved, and it takes away the egos and all of those things. So I think that's the main gist of it. And even with my clients coaching over 30 some years, drawing out how you're feeling and then drawing how you want to feel, and then just thinking about that transition and what has to happen can just be very therapeutic. Not that I'm anything near a therapist, but just to have a way of talking about something that's in your head and you get it out of your head and then talk about it. It takes on a totally different way of thinking.
Well, you have a way of helping people visualize. And I'll end with this last question because it kind of brings full circle about your chapter. And you have this metaphor about yourself that always sticks with me. And I'd love for you to share it for our audience of how you see. Yeah, I'll let you share it.
Well, the statement, and let me also say the statement just doesn't come overnight, right? It's a process, but the statement is, I am the sunlight on the rippling waters of transformation. It means absolutely nothing to anyone else. Obviously, transformation has always been a big thing in terms of how do I get from here to there? And that can be a long journey, it can be a short journey, but transformation is making that shift, right? And so the rippling waters, it doesn't always happen in a huge wave, right? It's the ripples. And so as the sunlight kind of shining on those ripples, that's how I see myself, is that sunlight on the ripples. So it just makes me feel a little giddy when I really get into that and take that on. It rejuvenates me in terms of that's what I'm doing. That's my purpose. So, my purpose is to help people make those transformations. But, to say my purpose is to make transportation, it doesn't really spark a lot in me other than that sunlight on the ripples is just my thing. It's my contribution, if you will. And it's one of my huge values is contribution.
It is. And I can't wait for our book to come out in a couple weeks. It's amazing. And for people to read your story. If people want to follow you and learn more and what are you doing, where's the best place for them to find you?
LinkedIn would probably be the best. I don't spend a lot of time on social media anymore. I think by series of doing some research, you should be able to find me. Wesselsgroup.com is the actual website.
Yeah, I'll have all of that in the show notes. Lori, I could always talk to you forever. And I'm excited because after this interview, I get to see you in person and I cannot wait. But for our listeners, I know they got as much out of this as I did. I always love our conversations. Thank you for being on the show today.
Always my pleasure, Natalie.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. I'm sure you are so inspired by the story that Lori shared with you. And if you want to figure out what your portfolio career could look like, we have a course coming up at the end of August. Check it out at hercsuite.com. We'd love to have you join us. And as always, if you are looking for other women to lift you up and guide you. That's what her C Suite is all about. I hope that you're getting a sense of the amazing women, not only in Power of What's Next, but also in our community. Keep shining your light bright. The world needs you.